Poet, Lover, Birdwatcher by Nissim Ezekiel. Nissim Ezekiel is looked upon as the father of modern Indian poetry in English. He was responsible for bringing the free verse revolution to India, to Indian poetry in English. From Indian poetry in English, vers libre, spectacularly to the Indian languages, and for a time completely eclipsed traditional poetry. However, Nissim Ezekiel was equally comfortable with free verse and with traditional verse. In fact, he used to say that he hated to think of himself as a poet who could write only free verse, as a poet who could not write traditional verse. This was like an artist who could not draw. It was absurd. That Nissim Ezekiel is a master of traditional verse forms is exemplified by the present poem, Poet, Lover, Birdwatcher. Let us read the text of the poem. Poet, Lover, Birdwatcher. To force the pace and never to be still is not the way of those who study birds or women. The best poets wait for words. The hunt is not an exercise of will, but patient love relaxing on a hill. To note the movement of a timid wing until the one who knows that she is loved no longer waits but risks surrendering. In this the poet finds his moral proved, who never spoke before his spirit moved. The slow movement seems somehow to say much more. To watch the rarer birds you have to go along deserted lanes and where the rivers flow, in silence near the source or by a shore, remote and thorny like the heart's dark flow. And there the women slowly turn around, not only flesh and bone, but myths of light, with darkness at the core, and sense is found by poets lost in crooked, restless flight. The deaf can hear, the blind recover sight. Let us focus critical attention on the title of the poem, Poet, Lover, Birdwatcher. It can be said that in all probability, this is a poem inspired by William Shakespeare, and this is suggested by the title of the poem. In his play, A Midsummer Night's Dream, William Shakespeare brings together the lunatic, the lover, and the poet. Let me read the line. In A Midsummer Night's Dream, 5:1, Shakespeare says, I quote, "The lunatic, the lover, and the poet are of imagination all compact," unquote. What is it that makes Shakespeare bring into conjunction the lunatic, the lover, and the poet? They have one common defining feature. They are all composed of imagination. Nissim Ezekiel was a professor of English, and he knew his Shakespeare. Inspired by Shakespeare, in the present poem he brings together the poet, the lover, and the birdwatcher. In her critique of the poem, published in the Miscellany, Meena Beliyappa explains that the title of the poem brings together three distinct lexical items which in the normal course of the use of the language do not share common semantic features. Perhaps for the first time in English language literature, the poet, the lover, and the birdwatcher are brought together. It can be said that of the three entities, the first entity, poet, is the most important entity simply because it is the first entity, and that the last entity, birdwatcher, is the least important entity because it is the last entity. It can also be argued that the second entity, lover, occupies a position of centrality in the triad. This is quite understandable. Not every man can be a poet, and certainly not every man can be a birdwatcher, but every man can be a lover. Every man is a lover. What is it that has prompted the poet to bring into conjunction poet, lover, and birdwatcher? The entire poem is an attempt to justify this rather weird decision of the poet to bring into juxtaposition the three items, poet, lover, and birdwatcher. Let us read the poem line by line. To force the pace, endeavor to be still, is not the way of those who study birds or women. The best poets wait for words. If the birdwatcher rushes into the forest, the bird flies away. In fact, if the birdwatcher refuses to be still, refuses to be motionless, the bird flies away. Similarly, if the lover pursues his woman too vigorously, he loses his woman. The poet cannot force himself to write a poem. A poem cannot be written under compulsion. The poet has to wait for inspiration to come in order to write the poem. Thus, the opening of the poem offers a brilliant justification of the rather strange title of the poem. The poet, the lover, and the birdwatcher all adopt the same strategy. They pursue vigorously by refusing to pursue. That is what all the three have in common. When I was a schoolboy, I was taught that John Lawrence, who was Viceroy of India in the 1860s, adopted towards Afghanistan a policy of masterly inactivity. Masterly inactivity. We do not do anything, but we are in control of the situation. It can be said that the approach of the poet, the lover, and the birdwatcher is an approach of masterly inactivity. The hunt is not an exercise of will, but patient love relaxing on a hill. To note the movement of a timid wing until the one who knows that she is loved no longer waits but risks surrendering. The hunt is not an exercise of will. What is will? Will means determination. Will means determined effort. Will means choosing a course of action and pursuing that course of action. The hunt is not an exercise of will. Will, determination, determined effort are all out of place here. But patient love relaxing on a hill. What a beautiful collocation. Patient love. When you love, you become patient. When you love, you become ready to wait. When you love, you become prepared to spend any amount of time. But patient love relaxing on a hill until the one who knows that she is loved no longer waits but risks surrendering. The lover pursues his beloved vigorously by refusing to pursue and creates a situation in which the woman on her own surrenders to the lover. In this the poet finds his moral proved, who never spoke before his spirit moved. Similarly, the poet waits for inspiration to come. He does not put pen to paper until inspiration comes. And only after inspiration comes, he writes his poem. And he knows that without inspiration, he is not able to write the poem. The slow movement seems somehow to say much more. This is a beautiful line. The slow movement seems somehow to say much more. When you are in love and the person you love is in love with you, when you are in a romantic situation, even very small things become very meaningful. Even seemingly trivial things gain tremendous significance. This significance may be lost on everyone else, but it is certainly not lost on the lovers. Lovers communicate to each other through small signals which are meaningless to everyone around them, but extremely meaningful to them. I am in love with a girl. I go to her house often in the company of several persons in order to hold discussions with her father. And whenever we go there, she serves us tea. She always manages to serve tea to me first, whatever be my seating position. I always get the first cup of tea. The slow movement seems somehow to say much more. This is not noticed by anyone, except, of course, me. The next few lines are rather difficult to explain. It took me years to make some sense of them. To watch the rarer birds, you have to go along deserted lanes and where the rivers flow, in silence near the source or by a shore, remote and thorny like the heart's dark floor. When I read it for the first time as a student, I wondered what it meant. And I used to wander along deserted lanes in order to find out what Ezekiel could possibly have meant by these lines. I found no rivers. The deserted lanes had only gutters. Is the poet trying to say that some women are rarer birds while some others are not so rare birds? I think the best explanation would be to say that there is a rarer bird in every woman. To watch the rarer birds, you have to go along deserted lanes. There is a rarer bird. There is a rarer bird in every woman. And this rarer bird can be brought out only by the lover. This rarer bird can be brought out only by the lover, and the lover has to take tremendous effort in order to bring out this rarer bird. The poet seems to believe that there is a rarer bird in each woman, and that this rarer bird can be brought out only by her lover, and that too by taking tremendous effort. When the rarer bird is brought out, the lover realizes that women are made not only of flesh and bone, they are also myths of light. When the rarer bird is brought out, the lover realizes that every woman is an angel of light, is an angel of effulgence, with darkness at the core, with mystery at the center. Women are mysterious creatures. They are angels of light. But this is a realization which can dawn upon you only if you are a lover capable of bringing out the rarer bird in your woman. Similarly, poets who are lost in meaningless struggles to write poetry suddenly get inspired and write the poem. When the moment of inspiration comes, the poet who is lost in a struggle to create poetry suddenly manages to create poetry. This is a wonderful moment. The birdwatcher sights his bird. The lover successfully concludes his romance. The poet writes his poem. This is a magical moment, and at this magical moment, miracles take place. The deaf can hear, the blind recover sight. Suddenly, the deaf start hearing, the blind start seeing. This is such a magical moment that miracles start happening. It has to be observed that from the totality of the thematics of the poem, it appears that the poet does not see poems as objects to be written. He sees them instead as objects to be found. It would seem that a poem is not an object which is written from the point of view of the speaker in the poem, but an object to be discovered, an object to be found. The position taken in this poem is somewhat midway between the positions taken by John Keats and W.B. Yeats. The Keatsian position, as embedded in one of his letters written to his friend and publisher, John Taylor, is that poetry should come in an absolutely effortless manner. This is what Keats says, I quote, "If poetry comes not as naturally as leaves to a tree, it had better not come at all," unquote. On the other hand, you have the Yeatsian position, as voiced in the poem Adam's Curse. It says, I quote, "We must labor to be beautiful," unquote. On the one hand, you have the Keatsian position. On the other hand, you have the Yeatsian position. The position taken in this poem is somewhat midway between the Keatsian position that poems should come as naturally, as effortlessly as leaves come to a tree, and the Yeatsian position that the writing of poetry is hard work, that we must labor to be beautiful. In the present poem, the poet seems to believe that it is necessary to pursue. It is necessary for the poet to pursue the poem, but he has to pursue vigorously by simply refusing to pursue. Let us take a look at the technical side of the poem. The poem is divided into 2 stanzas. Each stanza has 10 lines. Thus the poem has 20 lines organized in 2 stanzas. There is, to a large extent, linear parity in the poem. The lines are more or less of the same length. It is a piece of traditional verse. The meter is pentameter. The rhyme scheme is A, B, B, A, A, C, D, C, D, D. There is a remarkable flow in the poem. The golden fluidity of the poem is noteworthy. The imagery is powerful. It can be said without any hesitation that Nissim Ezekiel's poet, lover, birdwatcher is one of the peaks of post-independence Indian poetry in English.